Google literally tries to map your micro movements, and you reference that in your book. So I want to know, do you think tech companies understand human evolution better than most scientists?
I don't think companies understand evolution at all. I don't think they care. Those algorithms are predicated on predicting patterns of behavior based on yesterday's patterns of behavior. We as humans are good at that. We predict behavior. That's very important for social interaction. I just joined Instagram, but within 2 days I just got animal, wolves and tigers, because that's what I like. And I don't just like that. It doesn't understand my wider aspirations. One of the things that makes me optimistic about AI is that AI can digest an enormous amount of information and find things that we can't as humans, partly because we're biased. We go towards who is prestigious or what's popular. And I think one day machines will read works of the past, maybe even decades or even centuries old, and rediscover lost ideas that were just left behind in this process that you just mentioned.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Pages of Pandora. So today we have Alex Bentley on the show. He's a professor of anthropology and he has spent his whole career studying one question, basically how did humans get here? He had just put out this book called Collaborators Through Time with Michael J. O'Brien, and honestly, it is a trip. Today, we are going to talk about why ancient women were physically stronger than most of us, why your talent dies with you but ideas don't, and how the same collaboration that gave us the iPhone also gave us killer drones, and whether AI is just the latest chapter in a 2 million year old story or something completely different. Welcome to the podcast, Alex.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad that you're here today.
It sounds like we have a lot to cover, so maybe I'm ready to go, and really couldn't be more delighted to be here. So
Yes, let's get into this. This particularly blew my mind that student took almost 2 years and 167 hours just to figure out how to make a stone X. And ancient humans were teaching this for a million years at the same spot in Kenya. Like, I was thinking, we can't even commit to a gym routine for 3 months now. What has happened to us?
Well, that's a great question. You know, why is it so hard to sustain something new that we try to do in our own lives when humans in the past did the same thing for literally millions of years or thousands of years? And the reason for that is because humans aren't evolved, especially adults, we're not evolved to continually reinvent ourselves. Humans are very special in that it takes us a long time to learn what we need to know for our life. It takes us about 20 years. Chimpanzees are fully educated by the time they're 2 years old. But humans take a couple of decades to learn what they need to know. And we learn language from the moment we're infants. We learn how to interact in our communities over 10 years, and we learn to become useful to our communities over 20 years. So your question is really, why is it so hard to keep a gym membership? Because we're not evolved to just reinvent ourselves like that. And we're also not evolved to do things alone. So when you do things in a traditional community, you're doing things as people have done them and as generations have learned them before, and so it comes much more naturally. That's my answer.
That's really fascinating. I mean, I think discipline back then was more about survival than choice, right?
That's exactly right. We're a lot of researchers in psychology and in my field refer to choice overload. We're certainly not equipped to be faced with, literally
Right.
sometimes thousands of choices a day. It's very comforting sometimes to just be given something, for me anyway, to be given something to do, one thing to do,
Right.
and it's expected of you. And it's actually, that's how you can find calm in your life, is to just do one thing.
Right. I've also heard this fact somewhere that Google literally tries to map your micro movements, and you reference that in your book. So I want to know, do you think tech companies understand human evolution better than most scientists? Or are they just exploiting pattern they don't really get?
I don't think companies understand evolution at all. I don't think they care. Those algorithms are predicated on predicting patterns of behavior based on yesterday's patterns of behavior. They're moment to moment, and there's nothing in them that has any respect for how things are evolving or where things came from. They're just prediction algorithms. And again, we as humans are good at that. We predict behavior. I'm taking cues from you. I know how to behave in this interview. That's very important for social interaction. But we also learn things long term, and companies are not interested in where it's going. So just predicting patterns of behavior, consumer behavior. I just joined Instagram, so I'm of a different generation, so I just joined recently. As soon as I joined, I got all sorts of content, but within 2 days, I just got animals, wolves and tigers, because that's what I like. But I don't just like that. So it doesn't understand where I'm going. It doesn't understand my wider aspirations. It's just giving me wolves and tigers now. That's it.
Right. That's really interesting. And at the same time, it's a bit scary as well to think how closely our behavior can be predicted like that.
Yeah. It's and there are a lot of concerns about predictive algorithms and AI in that way, and I think we might get to that in a bit. But one of the things that I try to bring out in the book is that the only way we can understand long-term change is to actually study long-term change, rather than just try to predict things in the moment in the algorithmic world that we live in.
Right. Your book also talk about how our social brains evolved because of cooperation, not competition. But if you look social media, politics, business, everything rewards competition, right? So are we fighting against our own wiring?
Well, that's a good question. It feels very adversarial on social media, but I would argue that social media is one of the greatest examples of cooperation we've ever seen. I mean, in the early years of Facebook, they reached several billion users, before, I'm not sure exactly, but within the first several years of Facebook. And so we're all part of this project. We're all part of the internet. I'm having this interview with you as as a part of a greater cooperative endeavor that kind of followed COVID. We now do video conferencing so naturally. But we are an in-group, out-group species, like our chimpanzees cousins, and we do like to make groups, and we like to play games and sports and different kinds of adversarial games. So inside, it's a matter of scale. On one scale, it's really a great example of worldwide collaboration. On the other hand, the usual rules of intergroup competition apply as well.
Right.
It's a good question.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This brings me to my next question, which is you describe how an iPhone combines a processor from California, flash memory from Japan, and microcontroller from Switzerland, a battery and Wi-Fi module from China, all products of a separate tradition of a specialized expertise. If any one of those collaborative chain broke, the whole thing falls apart. So I want to know, how fragile do you think our technological civilization actually is?
That's another great question. And the assembling of products from different places and experts from around the known world is something that's been happening for thousands of years. It's responsible for the origin of cities. The Indus Valley civilization, I was an archaeologist at Harappa a long time ago. And, origins of cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa come from the confluence of different experts with different materials, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, steatite from Baluchistan, and so on. They all come to these cities. Same in Mesopotamia, same in Egypt. Cities existed as a nexus for putting things together into more complicated products. A great example is is making mummies in Egypt at Saqqara, about 600 BC. And a recent analysis has showed from chemical analysis of the mummies that they were getting their different materials, tars, embalming fluids, antiseptics. All these different materials came from all over the Mediterranean world and even Eurasia itself. They brought it all together. So does that make it fragile? In a way, yes. There was a collapse of Indus Valley civilization around 1900 BC. There was a collapse of the Bronze Age, I think very archaeologically, as you probably noticed. But in the wake of that, trade collapses, people start to do things regionally instead of globally, but even greater empires build in the wake of those collapses. So after the Bronze Age collapse, we had Assyria, we had the Babylonians, we had further dynastic civilizations after Harappa. So yes, it's fragile, but in a sense of the constant drive to collaborate and put things together and to build complexity, that's very resilient. In the wake of every collapse is a new and very often greater empire that emerged.
Right, that's a brilliant example you gave. Recently, we saw this collapse in COVID-19 as well, right? The whole world got shut down.
Exactly, and look at us now. We're now doing something that we rarely did. I mean, do you remember Skype? I mean, I Skyped like once every couple of years, but that was the way to video conference. But we not only changed, it's not only the technology after COVID, but a new cultural norm. You know, we all became comfortable doing this kind of video conferencing. So yes, you know, creative destruction, I think, is a phrase that's sometimes used for it.
Right. You have spent years studying how knowledge is passed down, how traditions survive, how collaboration compounds over a time. But this book itself is a product of that same process, right? It will either get passed down or it won't. What would it mean to you if this book became one of those ideas that just quietly disappeared, like most do?
Well, first of all, I got on your podcast, so it's succeeding to that extent. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. But yes, most books fails, most videos fail, most TikTok reels fail. Most things fail, and you never know which one is going to really be successful. But in the last several years, maybe 6 years, I've actually thought about, I publish a lot of scholarly articles and things, and I think that sometimes I'm writing for future machines. I think that one of the things that makes me optimistic about AI is that AI can digest an enormous amount of information and find things that we can't as humans, partly because we're biased. We go towards who is prestigious or what's popular, but also just the sheer volume. And I think one day machines will read works of the past, maybe even decades or even, centuries old, and rediscover lost ideas that were just left behind in this process that you just mentioned, which is most things fail. They don't fail because they're not good ideas or they're not quality. It's just bad luck. But I think that's one of the hopeful things about machine learning and the capacity for AI to read what we've left behind, rediscover old revolutionary ideas.
Right. Even I agree with you that writing a book is kind of a legacy. You will die after 50 years or 100 years, but who will pick your book, we don't know, right? It will help them.
Yeah, and it could, instead of, if someone has a really great idea and they write a book about it and nobody reads it, there's the potential, if we make AI widely accessible, that some young person in somewhere that might not have had access will get that those ideas will contribute just in a little bit to their schooling because it's brought to them by this information, this intelligent information machine, rather than by people who are limited in the ways that we know they are.
Right. I have seen that you have written this book with one of the author, Michael, right? So I want to know, was there a topic or an argument in this book where you genuinely disagreed particularly?
It's very hard to find a way that we disagree. Mike and I have written together works for 15 years. And one of the things that brings us together is we both believe very strongly in the principles of cultural evolution. He's also an archaeologist. But we believe in the resilience of and importance of inherited knowledge, because knowledge that's inherited over generations was adaptive, it was useful, and it's what we believe what people like to do, and it allows us to specialize in different things and have expertise and accumulate knowledge over time. So the basic philosophy of the book, we very much agreed on. And then the only thing that we might disagree on is he tends to focus on North America, and I tend to focus on Europe and Asia. And so we wound up focusing a little bit more on Europe and Asia in the book.
Okay. So your whole
Next book we can do North America.
So your whole book is about how collaboration made us who we are today. But I look around, and most powerful users of technology right now is adversarial. Palante doing battlefield AI, drones choosing targets, surveillance system tracking people. Did you ever sit back while writing and think, what if collaboration was the exception and using tools against each other is actually the default?
Yeah. So could AI be different? But, well, I'm an optimist. I look at the past and of these. I do think that AI is on par with the printing press, with cities, with mass media, those major transformations in our history and prehistory. I do think it's on par with that, but I also think it is one of a kind with that it's only eventually going to bring us to new heights. And the concerns are all valid: surveillance, cyber warfare, and the different concerns about AI. But there's another school of thought out there that's actually just really quite disappointed in AI so far. The lackluster nature of LLM writing, and that's because. And the way that I think to dispel some personal fears that some of us might have about AI, there are real fears. But one of the things is to familiarize yourself about how it learns. And large language models, for example, LLMs, they simply have an algorithm for predicting what's the most likely word to come next in a sentence. And that's based on them training on our language, our text. And once you learn that, you realize the real danger, at least in the near term with AI, is that if it starts training on its own output, it becomes a kind of a little echo chamber of itself. If it starts putting out, if we're generating lots of AI content, and then our AI, large language models, are training on that AI content, then it can just start to become gibberish. And some of the researchers actually use the word gibberish. So that's more my concern, is that we still retain a clarity of thought when using AI, that we still retain our creativity. But I do see it as just the next collaborator, the next technology that we are collaborating with.
Right. You have explained it really, really well.
Yeah.
Your book traces this beautiful arc from stone tools to iPhones, but right now kids are using ChatGPT to cheat on homework, and deepfakes are destroying people's reputation. AI is writing propaganda at scale. When you see all of that, do you ever think maybe technology evolving faster than us is not even a feature, it's a crisis in itself?
Yeah, I mean, you can actually draw a curve of the acceleration of technology. It's a very smooth curve going back 2 million years. It's just constantly accelerating, and it is overwhelming at times. But I think nonetheless, every example we have from history shows us that the first groups to adopt the new disruptive technology are the ones that succeed the most with it. So I teach in a university, and I'm very much in favor of my students adopting AI, learning how to use it, because they have to. They don't have a choice. And even if we feel like maybe we wish it weren't the case, it is the case, and they have to adopt it. And some of the things that make me hopeful about AI are particular the ways that if we adopt it quickly, and if we make sure that our expertise, that human expertise, is part of the equation, that we collaborate with AI, that it's not just listening to itself, then I think we can really democratize learning. And I think that AI can bring learning to underserved places in the world and communities in the world, as long as we lean into it.
Right.
That's me as an optimist. Yeah.
That's a very hopeful way to look at it.
Yeah. And, you have to be very flexible. It makes some things that used to be a human expertise just really easy, like writing. I mean, ask yourself, you could ask your chat GPT to write you a novel right now, but would you want to read it? Probably not, because it's not shared with anyone else. There's no, I'd rather read a novel that everyone else is reading, like the ones you feature on your site, and then we can talk about it, and then there's meaning to it. So some of these things that we might worry about AI replacing, I don't think will replace, because there won't be any desire for that.
Right. Another question related to this: you have spent years studying 2 million years of how humans evolved with technology. I just want to know from you personally, where do you think this is all going? Because AI is growing insanely fast. Robots are entering daily life. People are literally planning to live on Mars. So, does that excite you or scare you?
Well, first of all, I'd love to go to Mars. And again, I think that knowing a little bit about how AI works, how the learning algorithm works, helps. It's not very, like, the next generation. We all know about large learning models, large language models. Sorry, there's also large reasoning models. And so some people envision a future where AI does the science. It comes up with hypotheses, puts things together. Right now, it still needs human expertise. Large reasoning models can do they can do tasks up to a certain level of complexity, and then they just collapse. So that's a new paper from Apple that showed that you get to a certain level of complexity of the problem, and it collapses. So I am an optimist in thinking that AI systems are going to be our collaborators, and they're going to need our input, both for reasoning and creativity. But I do also very much believe that we need to encourage everybody to really to adopt it, because if we don't adopt it, then the people in control are the ones who understand it, and we don't understand it. If we adopt it, then we can bring new forms of analysis and occupations and workforce to different parts of the world. And I'll just say one more time that every time we look in prehistory or history of new technologies and ways of bringing things together, because that's what AI does. It brings ideas together, and it helps you sort them. Look at we wouldn't have a Silk Route 2,000 years ago if dynastic China didn't figure out how to put new technologies together and make porcelain, or looms and silk weaving to make silks that were exported. Every time we look in history, those who adopted the technology and put new things together with the technology are the ones that fared the best. So I don't know if I'm in the majority or not, but I want everybody to use AI.
Right.
And for me, it just elevates the level of the problem that you think about, and it makes other kinds of work unnecessary.
Right. As you mentioned, I think there is no other way. We need to adapt it. Otherwise, someone else will take control of it.
Yeah, and it's great for writing up meeting minutes.
Right.
It does all the boring stuff right now. So I think we can, and I think the more you adopt it, the less you may be afraid of it.
Right. There is this example you gave, the Bali water temple story, which is incredible how it has showed century of ritual that was actually running a complex irrigation system. Scientists came in and tried to modernize it, and everything collapsed. And right now, we are watching AI companies try to disrupt education, healthcare, creative industries. So I want to just compare it with that story. Are we making the same mistake?
That's a great comparison of Balinese, which was a very uh, uh, high adaptive cultural system in Indonesia, where rice farmers through a water goddess. This is very mountainous territory with very complex logistics of getting irrigation water to all the rice fields. And it was mediated by a water goddess for hundreds of years. A ceremony that actually had the purpose, a religious purpose, but it also had that logistical, practical purpose of adapting the irrigation. Things like leaving a field to fallow so that pests subside, and then you replant the rice fields in the irrigated paddy. And then when they came in the Green Revolution and wanted to plant 3 crops a year, it collapsed because they didn't understand the tradition. And so one of the things that we do, you're very right to bring up, is that we have to watch out and we have to learn ways to incorporate AI practices and the shortcuts that AI allows us. If we can find a way to do it in a way that preserves the traditional practices that we have, and I don't mean even ancient traditions, and the ways we interact, our need for human interaction, so on. About 40% of the use of LLMs right now is for counseling. Just talk to it, and so, but that is a way that it is being incorporated into traditional human interaction. It's kind of a substitute. So we do need to learn from those lessons of how, when we try to just replace a traditional way of doing something, it can cause a collapse of the system. And that's one of the reasons why we wrote the book. That's a great argument for the relevance of a long-term perspective on humanity in helping us navigate the AI revolution.
All right. Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience about your book?
No, just thank you very much. It's in talking to you, I realize just how fascinating the subject is generally. I'm just one person with an opinion, and it's just even better hearing your questions, because I think we could go on all day.
It was such a thoughtful conversation. I mean, honestly, I got to learn a lot of things. You have gave such a great examples, and it was very thoughtful conversation with you.
Yeah, and one of the things we wanted to do was just put these examples into the conversation, because people don't usually talk about this. In fact, I think you're the first person to compare the Balinese water temples to AI. So, and it just makes you think differently, doesn't it? Because we kind of approach things the same way. And yeah, it's a brilliant question. I'll have to think about that more. Yeah.
Yes. Are you working on any other book right now?
Yeah, I feel like the book was so compressed that my next book, I think, will be about how respect for traditions can help with public health care. Because and I don't want to get too much into detail because it's on another topic, but every time I'm in a conversation, and just like what you said about the Balinese water temples, I feel like if we're talking about public health or behavior or conflict, whatever it is, if you understood the deep history of this, geopolitics, almost everything that's going on in the world is underlain by not only decades, but very often centuries of history. And once you start to understand that, you can find ways to find, I think, common ground to make change happen a little bit more easier for people.
Right.
So yeah, the next one might be on more focused on public health, but we'll see.
So you have started writing that book. When it's releasing?
What's that?
Oh, when your next book is releasing, have you started writing on this?
Actually, yes.
Wow.
I've started, yeah. But I need to, the collaborators through time was so condensed. Every chapter was different. And I almost feel like each chapter could be expanded out into a full book.
Yes. All right, Alex. Thank you so much for being here today. It was a great conversation with you. And to everyone
Yeah.
listening out there, please check out the book. The book name is Collaborators Through Time. It's available on Amazon. And you can get this copy in Kindle and as well as paperback version. And you can also follow author on Instagram and check out his website for more of his details. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Have a great day ahead.
You too. That was really fun. Okay. Bye.
Bye.